we're gearing up for, maybe some bathing suit season. So if you're looking to get healthy or get in shape, we're keeping our eye on nutrition with our nutritionist, Shira Hirshberg. So I'd like to join her to the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center. Today, Shira, we're talking about protein. So come on in. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Molly.
So good to see you.
You too.
You are with All Foods Nutrition. You're registered and licensed dietitian and nutritionist.
Yes.
So you're our expert, and we're so glad to have you.
Good to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. So we're talking a little bit about protein today, kind of all-encompassing things. So let's just start off by talking about what is protein and why is it important in our diet?
Sure. So protein is one of the three main types of things we need, right? We've got carbohydrates, we've got fats, we've talked about those, and now we're on protein, right? And with the exception of water, those are the three things that we need to eat a lot of to keep ourselves going. And most people think of muscle when they think of protein. Certainly it helps build our muscle. But it's also important for some other reasons. It helps us stay full longer, and a lot of people get a lot of satisfaction from protein. So those are some of the benefits.
And it's one of those things that we really do need. So let's talk a little bit about what foods really count as protein. As my phone starts, talking to itself. So I'm going to turn the volume down on my phone here.
Sounds like
there we go.
So foods that have protein, most people know about the big ones, right? So you've got your meats, your poultry, your fish, your seafood. Those are kind of the ones we automatically think of as those American meat style ones. But of course there are lots of other vegetarian proteins out there. So there's your peanut butter or nuts, right? Anything that comes from nuts, seeds. So maybe sunflower seeds is a common example. We've also got soy products, so that would be tofu, edamame, and anything made of those things. Eggs are a good one, and those are kind of the big categories that we think of when it comes of protein. We've also got some dairy foods that are high in protein, so things like Greek yogurt's especially high in protein compared to a regular yogurt. That's one of the reasons it's gotten so popular. And then also cheese has a good amount of protein as well.
So are we looking at, what's a good amount of protein that everyone really should have? What's a good suggested amount of protein just for the average person?
So, of course, it depends on how big you are, right? Smaller people need less protein, bigger people need more. So we actually calculate it on body weight. If you want to do an official calculation, you can take your body weight, divide by 2.2. That tells us your kilos, right? Or you can Google that. And you multiply that by 0.8. That's the minimum amount. What we say people want to at least get that much. The other way to think about it is in terms of percent of what you eat. So let's say you're someone, we're going to go with the average 2,000 calorie diet, right? That's what all your nutrition facts labels are based on. So in a 2,000 calorie diet, you want 10 to 35% of your food to come from protein. Now that's a huge range, right?
Yeah,
So for that 2,000 calorie person, that's 50 grams to 175, right? It's a very large range. So the good news is that, that gives you a lot of room, right? It doesn't have to be exactly one amount. There's no exact specific amount. There's a pretty wide range that works. So most people in America get plenty of protein. Almost nobody in the United States is low in protein, right? We do worry about that in developing countries where people don't have good access to food, and so often people are protein deficient in those places, but in the U.S., most people get plenty of protein.
So we're not really worried about under-consuming that.
No.
Should we worry about over-consuming on protein or overloading on protein?
Well, certainly there are a lot of diets that are very popular these days. Low carbohydrate diets, Atkins, is an example, and then paleo diets that are pretty heavy focused on protein. Those diets don't necessarily say you have to eat a ton of protein, but it's kind of built into the fabric of the diet. You just don't have a ton of other options. So most people have a lot of protein. So if we go over that recommendation, so more than that 35% of what we're eating, it can start to be a little bit concerning. It can put too much pressure on our kidneys. And so we want to try to stick within that 35% range.
Okay. So let's see. So how do we do the math again? I'm kind of interested in this.
Sure.
Let's see if I can find my calculator.
You go from, if you're going with body weight, we do 0.8 grams per kilo.
Okay.
Let's say you're somebody who's lifting a ton of weight and trying to get huge. Okay. Maybe 2 grams per kilo is the max that we would go up to. So that's kind of the range that you would see if you're using body weight to calculate. So you take your body weight, let's say someone's 150 pounds.
Okay. So you're 150.
You're 150. You're going to divide by 2.2.
Divided by 2.2. There we go.
And that gives you your kilos.
Okay.
Okay, so 68 kilos, that's your 150 pound person. Now you multiply by 0.8.
0.8, oops, that's 0.0. Look, I think I just messed it up. Oh, no, maybe not. 545.
So now you've calories, right? So now from calories, we got to get to grams because most people are thinking of grams. So now divide by 4.
136. Is that right?
That's
I might have messed
wrong
it up.
somewhere. It's going to get you somewhere between 50 and 60. A 140 pound person is 50 grams per day as the minimum.
Okay. So that's what we're looking at in terms of protein if you're trying to get bigger.
Bigger, that's when it goes up. So for that 140 pound person, we go up to 175 is the max. Let's see. I did calculation, So 175 would be, you wouldn't want to go any higher than that. That's that 35%.
Okay.
And then if you're going by that, like, 2 grams per kilo, right, it's 125. So you don't necessarily need the max to put on the maximum amount of muscle. Even a really intense athlete doesn't have to go up to that 35%.
So and you just mentioned it can be hard on your kidneys if you're consuming too much protein.
Yeah.
Say you're just looking to get healthier, maybe you're looking to lose some weight. Is incorporating more protein and taking out other things, or incorporating more protein? Yeah, can that help?
I think it depends on the way you're eating now. So I think it matters what you're eating in each meal and snack more than the total amount per day. So let's say you're somebody who for breakfast has Cheerios, which is a perfectly fine cereal, and milk, and that's your breakfast. Well, there's not a ton of protein in that, right? A little bit in the milk, but not really any more than you would need to deal with the carbohydrates in the milk, let's say.
Okay.
Because there's not very much protein, most people won't be full very long from that meal. So they're going to get hungry again an hour, 2 hours later, and go looking for snack. So if you add some protein to that meal now with your Cheerios, most people are like, well, what would I put with that? Well, maybe eggs on the side, maybe some sliced almonds. Shred your almonds on a cheese grater.
I knew what you meant.
Some sliced almonds in there, and that will keep you full longer, keep you satisfied. You won't go looking around for a snack, because if you're snacking really often, most people aren't snacking on the healthiest things. So it's better to have a solid meal, keeps you full a little bit longer than constantly snacking throughout the day.
Okay. All right. And so how do we know if we're getting enough protein?
So, I would say...
Because we're probably not doing this math, and I pressed the wrong button on my calculator, so obviously I'm not even doing the math right to know if I'm getting enough protein.
I would say that, let's say you eat your breakfast and you're full anytime before 3 hours later. So you eat breakfast at 7 in the morning, and you're hungry at 9. You're doing something wrong. Either you're not eating enough food, or you're not eating enough protein, or you're not eating enough fiber. I would say those are your typical options. So I would say it's more about fullness and satisfaction, so you say, okay, let's say you're eating, well, I am having a little bit of protein and I am having a little bit of carbohydrates and I'm still not full. Try eating a little more of those foods and see if it keeps you full longer. If it doesn't, you might want to up the protein, maybe have a hard-boiled egg or something else on the side as well to up the protein and see if that takes you longer. So it's all about experimenting with your own diet and seeing what happens. In terms of total amount for health, you really don't need to worry about it unless you're a vegan. Some vegans will have trouble, right? Because protein foods for vegans contain a lot of fiber. So you can only eat so much before you feel full. For the vast majority of Americans, it's not an issue. Total protein, it's just like, what's keeping me satisfied, and kind of experimenting to find that out on their own.
Okay.
Or with the help of a registered dietitian or somebody.
Yeah.
Who can support you.
And then what I was going to say is a lot of times people think protein meats or lean meats. And so what are some ideas you have for vegetarians or vegans of different ways to incorporate protein that maybe you don't think of? Like you mentioned hard-boiled egg, but for vegan, that's not going to work. So what are some ideas that good sources of proteins that we can get? Or maybe you're not a vegan or vegetarian and you're just sick of eating chicken breast all the time.
So, our beans, our seeds, and our nuts are the primary way to get vegetarian protein, and soy, right? Those are kind of the big heavy hitters. In terms of if we're talking snacks, then really nuts and seeds are the easiest way to go. Things like, maybe roasted chickpeas are becoming more and more popular. You can get like dried roasted chickpeas in a million flavors now. So we're getting more snack options that are available. But in terms of our meals, including beans, including soy, so adding some fresh edamame or even frozen that you've heated up are good ways to get some plant-based protein. Some people love tofu, and there are tons of things to do with tofu because it's a totally neutral food. It tastes like whatever you put it with or whatever you put on it. But if you're not into tofu, there are a lot of other ways to do it, and edamame is usually a pretty tasty option for people.
Okay. And then with that, then do you have to worry about, like you were mentioning, the on the snacking side of things, you have to worry about all the extra stuff, when you're looking at all the extra salt and the extra flavor.
Yeah, that's a good point you mentioned. So in terms of nuts, they can come with a lot of extra salt, a lot of extra sugar. And so what you really want to look for, my personal opinion, is that a roasted, unsalted nut is the way to go. The roasting gives you flavor, but then you don't have that added salt. So that's a way to get, I think, the best of both worlds when it comes to nuts. All nuts are good nuts. It's just what's on them that matters.
I had the best nut mix the other day. I had like some shredded coconut, some walnuts, some goji berries in it, and none of it was salted, none of it was sweetened. I mean, there was probably some cranberries in there, so there was sweetness to it, but none of it was salted. I was so proud of myself.
Yeah, I got a good combination.
Yeah,
nice.
I thought of you, and I was like, she's gonna be so proud of me. Okay, so we talked about putting on, if people are trying to put on some more muscle. We talked about if people are trying to lose weight, maybe if adding more protein's the way to go. What are some foods we can get protein of? We talked about that. We talked about if we're boosting protein, if we're trying to incorporate more protein, is there anything else that we should be adding as well? Or anything that maybe we should be taking away if we're trying to build in that protein?
So that's a good question. So for most people, if we're thinking about a lunch or dinner, we've got, let's say, our plate, right? So here's our plate. Yeah. Half the plate you want to be fruits and vegetables. And so usually that's the part that's lacking, right? Yeah. Is that half a plate of fruits and vegetables. Protein's a quarter. Really you only need the amount of protein about, if we're talking about a meat, that's about the size of your palm. And so a lot of people look at that and they're like, I eat twice that amount.
My steak is this big.
Right. So when we look at ounces, right, I would say I have a 4-ounce palm. I'm 5'10". I'm not a tiny person. That makes sense, right?
Yeah, I just have very large heels on today.
Some men might even have a 5-ounce palm, but very few people go bigger than that. So that 8-ounce steak is really too much for most people in terms of weight management. And then we've got our quarter plate of starch, on that side. So that might be your potato, your pasta, your grains, and that's about the size of a fist. And then all of the fruit and vegetables. Most people aren't like, oh, that's way too much carbohydrate, right? So that's a pretty reasonable amount. The protein's a pretty reasonable amount. And usually what's left is that people aren't eating enough fruits and vegetables. Okay. So I would say the fiber is what you really got to pair with it if you're looking for weight management, to go with that satisfaction from the protein.
Okay. And same like with the snacks. Like I always think of like an apple and peanut butter. Yep. So is it good to incorporate, like, do you need to, if you're going for adding protein, should you add something else to it, or are we looking at
like protein only?
Yeah.
No, so I think that's a perfect example because it combines two food groups, which I think makes a good snack. You've got your fruit and you've got your protein. You have a little carbohydrate, a little bit of protein. It has some healthy fat in the nuts. Together, that's a great combo. So looking for something like that, especially if high fiber in your apple. So that's a great combo. Looking for two food groups, and having one of them be protein will keep you full longer.
It's gonna kind of keep you satisfied longer.
Exactly.
And kind of, I know for me, like when I'm looking for something that like good snack, carrots and peanut butter, because then I'm getting the vegetable and then I'm getting the peanut butter, kind of the sweet thing.
Same concept. So let's talk peanut butter crackers, for instance. Common snack. You can buy them in those little packs like this big, right? Yeah. The amount of peanut butter in those is negligible, right? There's almost none. It's just like tiny, like layer, sad little peanut butter. What? The reason is that it's expensive. The peanut butter is the expensive part. The cracker is cheap, so they don't put a lot. So I say peanut butter crackers are a great snack, but you got to do it yourself.
Yeah, DIY.
Take your own crackers, put your own peanut butter, stick them in your own Ziploc bag.
Do it yourself.
Or reusable snack bag.
There you go. I like that. Do it yourself. Yeah. Okay. And then when we're consuming this and we're moving throughout the day, what is the protein really doing for us? Like if we're adding all this in, is it going to get us going for longer? Like when we're sustaining it?
That's a good question. So I would say it keeps your energy stable. Okay. So your carbohydrates are that energy boost, and the protein is what keeps it going. So when you have carbohydrates alone, that's your Cheerio example, right? Let's say you're just like eating dried Cheerios out of the thing because you're in the car, and so
I totally do that. Not gonna lie. It's fine.
So it's just not going to last you long. You've got that energy boost, but it's going to drop you off pretty quickly because there's nothing to keep you going. So you add that protein, it helps actually your body digest the carbohydrates more slowly. So it's actually keeping your energy on level because you're just getting it more slowly. You're not like getting all this carbohydrate energy and then all of it's gone, you're using it up. This helps you stay in the level for longer and keeps you full longer, and so it really is your kind of energy maintainer.
Okay. So protein's a good way to go. Just keep it in that level.
Yeah, it's just the amount matters, again, like all things, right? Protein is good, but you don't need 50 grams of protein in your shake. It's we're not going to use more than 25 grams even after an intense workout to replenish our muscles. So you're just getting extra calories. So it's not that more is always better. And there's a lot of products geared for people trying to be fit that have a ton of protein shoved in them. And most of it's unnecessary. It's a marketing scheme. So those 50-gram protein bars, you really don't need that much.
So in turn, is that going to add on weight?
If it's more food than you need total, yes. You know, it's not that the protein versus some other food really matters. It's the total amount of energy you're consuming. But it's just that you're paying more money for something that's not doing you any good, right? So there's a lot of marketing schemes in food out there. Food companies are out to make money. But, you know, it's just, you just don't need that much protein at one time. You can't use it all.
Okay, so there you go. If you are trying to up your consumption of protein, do it in a smart way.
Yep.
And if you're not going to burn it off, then you know where it's going to go.
It's just extra food.
It's going to go somewhere else. All right, Shira, thank you so much. She's with All Foods Nutrition. If you have any questions, let us know. We're discussing ideas of what we're going to talk about every other week, and so would love to hear from you if you have any questions for Shira Hirshberg. She's with All Foods Nutrition. She's here answering your questions. All right, thank you so much for joining
Thanks,
us.
Molly.
We will talk to you soon.